Okay. Good after tea, everybody. As mentioned, Vathiswa Zikishe. I'm based in the Eastern Cape and I coordinate crew in the Eastern Cape. I was hoping that the targets of the plant conservation strategy are going to be explained. But as you might know, as Savannah already told you, that we've got about 16 targets, outcomes-based strategy. I'm going to be presenting on the outputs of those strategy. You know, it's like 16 targets and they've got objectives and then they've got outputs. So for the purpose of this talk, I've looked at those outputs and the work or activities that we've already implemented in the Eastern Cape. And so I came up with this outline. So on target 3, which has the main objective of coming up with the information on plant diversity documented, targeting undersampled areas for collection. For instance, Eastern Cape was also identified as one of those under-collected areas. And target 14 is on education and awareness, but the specific output on this target is about ensuring that crew works in areas where shredding plants are concentrated. And if you can note that the targets, I didn't put them in a certain order because target 3 and target 14, for instance, I find them, they are very like interlinked. And target 13 is on indigenous knowledge, which is the question that was raised about studies conducted to capture indigenous knowledge. On this target, we've covered various topics through the SEBENZA interns, but then because this is the plant conservation strategy, I'm going to dwell on the results that were produced through the plant research topic that was conducted on this by the SEBENZA interns. And then target 15 is on capacity development. Capacity development in the Eastern Cape, we focus more on the SEBENZA, and it was a national program and it involved graduates and matriculants, but in the Eastern Cape we chose to work in the deep rural areas and then only worked with the matriculants based on those villages because we wanted to do the indigenous knowledge research and as well as empowering the youth in those areas. And then I'm gonna share with you some of the insights so far is with the plant conservation strategy. Okay, this is the map that in our program we use as a guiding tool. It is our planning tool. When we plan, for instance, where to go, which areas to focus on, this is the map that we're using. But for this particular talk, I'm going to be focusing more on the concentration of species of conservation concern, as well as the undersampled areas, which is the Eastern Cape. This area is where I'm currently based, where I'm working. As you can see in terms of the colors, the lighter is the pink color. It means the lower the concentration of species of conservation concern. And the darker the colors as in the Cape, it means the higher is the concentration of species of conservation concern. So this data is from the herbarium, georeference herbarium data, and also like from specimens collected, and then this is the georeference data. But then the layer that you see on top here is the information that has been collected by crew. So before I worked in the Eastern Cape, this area used to be very light, but now you can see the color is changing slightly. So this is what sort of like informed us to start a crew in the Eastern Cape and also to realize the goals of that target. Okay. In terms of like working with species or monitoring species of conservation concern, these are some of the highlights of the crew work that has been done in the Eastern Cape over the past 3 years. I started there in 2015, and So I'm going to just show you the highlights from different categories of the red list. Slengiwe is going to give a presentation on national red list and explaining the criteria to you. But then this is like to show to you that the information that we didn't have previously when we started, before we started crewing the Eastern Cape, we now have due to this kind of work that we've started in the Eastern Cape. So this particular species was known from a small geographic area. Yes, it is still confined in that particular area, which is in the deep rural area called Kiwane, between East London and Port Alfred, and it was only known from a single location. But due to the work that we did, we found 10 other subpopulations, but still in that kind of like distribution. It's Acmadinia kiwanensis, a critically endangered species. Okay, and we've also rediscovered species and found new population. This species is Maconia revoluta from the Amatole mountain range. It is confined in that area, but it was only known from the historical data, which was last seen or recorded in the 1960s. But working in the Eastern Cape now, we found that this species covers this whole mountain range. Still confined there, but no longer data deficient. I'm working on updating the assessment on this species. So it's gonna change from being data deficient to something else, because data deficient doesn't mean, it's not a track status. It doesn't give you any information. It just means that there is not enough information. But now, due to this work that we've done in the Eastern Cape, we are now gonna be able to update its status. And then the other one that you see, the Areospermum bracteum, was known from a single population around Grahamstown. So I found 2 more other population. But in the areas, when we do like crew survey, we also we record the threats, what's happening in that population, what is there, what is happening. So this population that we recently found is in the municipal common age. There are lots of activities happening there. So when we do red list assessments, we also consider those factors as well. And this other one is Meremia malvifolia, critically endangered, presumed extinct. We didn't have any information about the species. It was presumed extinct, as the status suggests. But we found this population in the road reserve called Coombs Reserve. And it's like a public road, and people drive through that road. So we found this only population there. Okay, and another example is like species known from a small population. This one, Agathosma honaquensis. Maybe some of you might know that in PE there's a mall called Bay West Mall. So when that mall was built, we were worried that the population of Agathosma honaquensis was the only known population. And then we thought that due to the development of the mall, we're now going to lose this entire population. But in 2015, when we did surveys around Red House, we rediscovered this population in Red House. And actually, this is the type locality where the species was described from and was seen by Peterson in 1910. So we were quite happy to see that. But again, in Red House, there are other activities happening. It's a small town, it can be developed anytime. So we don't know, but we were quite happy to find that, okay, Bay West Mall is there, the species is gone, but at least there is another natural population occurring of this species. And then there's Brachysteuma compton. When we do a red list assessment, if you visit now and time and again the red list website, you will see something called rationale or justification, which tells you why the species has been listed as the critically endangered or vulnerable in the case of this one. So this one is known from 5 locations. And those 5 locations are around Grahamstown. And then in 2005, there were 2 plants like that were recorded in the combination near Grahamstown. And then when we started crew in the Eastern Cape, we recorded over 30 plants in this particular common age. And then we visited actually all 5 locations, but then one of those locations we didn't find the species. We went there twice, but this is not to say that the population is now extinct in that population. We're gonna still keep on looking for more of the species. Okay, so as I mentioned that target 3 and target 14 are interlinked in that we monitor and also work with the volunteers. This is the map showing that the output of target 14, which is to ensure that crew works in areas where the threatened species are concentrated, and also like the volunteers have expanded, or the number of volunteers expanded. It has also been achieved. Not really achieved in the sense that there are still areas in the Eastern Cape that doesn't have crew groups, and so these are the groups that I work with in the Eastern Cape. There's St. Francis and PE. They started together with the Cape, and then now I've got these 3 groups in the Eastern Cape. They're still tiny, but yeah, I've got 5 minutes and I still have a lot to say. Okay, this is a map showing where our groups are in relation to the map that I presented to you earlier. So I'm going to try to speed up. And on target 13 output, on indigenous knowledge, as I've mentioned, that our SEBENZA pioneers, they tackled various topics on indigenous knowledge. Hunting, seafood harvesting. I think some of you might recall that in 2015 when I was here, I presented the outcomes on their research. So these are the villages that they focused on to do their indigenous knowledge research. This is in the coast between East London and Port Alfred, and the one that's inland, Pyramid near King Williamstown. So here we've got species of conservation concern which we assume that they are threatened due to overexploitation, but we don't have enough data to say that. So the data which was collected by SEBENZA pioneers was not enough for us to make that conclusion. So that's why you see that not enough data there. We still have those species, and recently we have appointed an intern that's going to look on selected species that she's going to work on and conduct research and really validate the claim that the species are threatened due to medicinal use. And on target 15, outputs on the capacity development, we worked with SEBENZA pioneers, as I've mentioned at the beginning, that we had matriculants based in rural areas, and that's Pondoland, those are from Pondoland, and then our part of the Eastern Cape. And we gave them skills on various aspects like plant collecting, insect collecting, and medicinal plants, and also like because we partnered with Rhodes University Anthropology Department, so they also gain skills on how to collect like quantitative data, like doing household interviews and analyze that data and do like presentations. So in our partner, we had about 6 SEBENZA interns, and then 2 of them got job. We've got now Someleze, who started as a SEBENZA pioneer and worked with us as a herbarium assistant, and he is now the specimen digitizing person at the Shoreland Herbarium for the Karoo biogas. We think that SEBENZA really ignited the spark in terms of moving forward with SOMI's future. And then we had also Kulurwa, who started out as a volunteer at the Shoreland Herbarium and became a SEBENZA pioneer. Now she is a permanent SENBI employee as a herbarium assistant based here in KZN. So these are some of the highlights. As you might know that the plant conservation strategy aims to fulfill its goal by 2020, and I think we are moving in the right direction. So because the first one is that everybody know crew as monitoring species of conservation concern as well as working with volunteers, but we also learned that through the opportunity presented by the conservation strategy that we also need to look at how the populations in rural areas are doing, because it's easy for us as conservation people to say that those populations that are in the rural areas will be wiped away, but without having the interactions with those people in the rural areas to see what are their views of conservation, we cannot really conclude that. So this opportunity, this for us was an eye-opening opportunity that we're not only monitoring plant species, we also need to look or to learn from the people that are custodians of these areas. So because for me it was really a learning experience that when I went to these areas, I went in a mindset thinking that I'm going to teach these people about conservation, but it ended up being the other way around. So we learn from each other. So to me, this was a big lesson. And I thank you.